getting into woodworking or DIY, you've probably hit a wall. Do you really need to drop hundreds of dollars on a massive table saw to get professional accuracy? Or can a cheap circular saw do the exact same job? It's intimidating when forums and tutorials tell you that you have to surrender half your garage and a huge chunk of your budget to a stationary tool just to be taken seriously. But look at professional job sites. The carpenters framing out entire houses and building massive structural additions are doing almost all of it with handheld circular saws, not table saws. This Venn diagram breaks down exactly what these tools actually do. Right in the middle, you see the functional overlap. Both saws rip boards down to whip, crosscut them to length, and tilt to cut bevels. Look over on the table saw side. The distinct advantage here is repeatable speed and massive rip capacity. You set the fence once, and you can push through a dozen identical cuts in minutes. On the circular saw side, the edge is supreme portability and infinite crosscut length. Because the tool travels over the wood, it can cut as far as you can push it. Both tools cut the exact same wood. Your decision comes down to the volume of cuts you need to make and how fast you need to achieve precision. Set these two tools next to each other, and the size discrepancy is laughable. One takes up an entire workbench, while the other fits inside a small plastic case. Yet a standard $150 corded circular saw packs the exact same 15-amp motor as that massive bench-mounted saw. Despite having equal power, the circular saw has a severe mechanical limitation. It's a freehand tool. The motor and blade have no fixed path to travel on. Because it goes exactly where your hand pushes it, a circular saw's accuracy is entirely dependent on your physical control and your willingness to clamp down external straight edges. A table saw eliminates that variable entirely. The built-in rip fence guarantees a perfectly straight line, letting you align the wood in seconds. A $500 table saw investment buys pre-calibrated accuracy. You are paying to eliminate setup time while using the exact same motor found in a handheld saw. A handheld circular saw can perfectly replicate the precision of a stationary table saw, provided you are willing to put in the prep work. That prep involves building a custom DIY panel guide out of scrap plywood and lining the bottom with silicone grip tape so it locks onto your material. For less than $40, you get track saw level, splinter-free precision that rivals high-end shop equipment. The catch is the manual labor required before the blade ever spins. You have to measure your marks, lay down the jig, and carefully align the edge for every single cut you make. This chart plots setup time against cut accuracy. The DIY jig approach scores high on accuracy, but it also spikes your setup time. If you're building an entire kitchen's worth of cabinets, that repeated alignment becomes a massive workflow bottleneck. Relying strictly on a circular saw is a direct exchange. You are trading your own time and physical effort in order to save money and keep your garage floor clear. That freehand mobility does give the circular saw some unique tricks, like plunging the blade directly into the middle of a panel, or rolling a heavy 4x4 post to cut through all sides. Those advanced cuts introduce severe risks. When you tilt the saw forward for a plunge cut, you completely remove the stability of the flat sole plate resting against the wood. Operating with a loose or floating sole plate makes it incredibly easy for your hand to slip and accidentally twist the spinning blade inside the narrow cut path. When that twisted blade catches the wood walls, it creates massive friction. The motor bogs down and the tool instantly kicks backwards, right at you. The circular saw's absolute freedom of movement is its greatest asset. If you don't control it perfectly, it is also its greatest safety liability. Table saws dominate one specific domain: the rapid, repeatable dimensioning of massive sheet goods and long, narrow boards. This schematic highlights the single most crucial spec on a table saw: rip capacity. To be truly useful, a table saw absolutely must have a minimum rip capacity of 24 inches. That specific 24-inch width allows you to take a standard 4x8 sheet of plywood and instantly split it exactly in half, keeping the bulk of the weight safely supported against the fence. If you buy a saw with less than 24 inches of capacity, you force the wider, heavier side of the sheet to hang off the edge of the table. Breaking down standard sheets becomes notoriously difficult and highly dangerous. Buying a table saw without sufficient rip capacity defeats its primary purpose of high-speed sheet breakdown. While it speeds up your cuts, the table saw demands a massive spatial trade-off. You have to leave huge amounts of empty clearance in your shop for the wood to feed in and feed out. If you try to push a long board through without adequate outfeed tables catching it on the other side, the weight of the overhanging wood creates a dangerous levering effect, lifting the front of the board right off the table. When properly supported, that friction practically vanishes. The wood travels perfectly straight against the fixed fence. But if the wood itself is bowed, or if you apply uneven pressure while pushing, the material will pinch against the rigid stationary blade. The teeth grab the wood and create a high-velocity catapult effect. Instead of the tool jumping backward like a circular saw, the table saw launches the heavy stock directly into the operator's torso. The table saw successfully removes the variable of the tool's path, but in exchange, it demands absolute environmental control. You must have flat ground and proper outfeed support to operate it safely. You have to stop treating these tools as good versus bad. The right choice requires matching the hardware strictly to your specific space, your budget, and the volume of projects you plan to build. This decision flowchart maps out the exact paths. If you are a baseline beginner with limited space and a tight budget, the path leads to the circular saw paired with DIY jigs. You spend less than $200, and you can store your entire cutting setup on a single garage shelf. If your focus is mobile carpentry or framing, you follow the path to a circular saw paired with a speed square for fast on-site crosscuts. For those taking on high-volume repetition with dedicated workshop space, the flowchart points directly to a 10-inch table saw with at least a 24-inch rip capacity. While this requires permanent square footage, it provides the rapid, repeatable dimensioning necessary for complex projects like custom cabinets. If you're an absolute beginner and only have budget for one cutting tool to start your DIY journey, buy a high-quality corded circular saw. Take the time to master its safety profile, build a simple straight-edge jig, and use it to learn the fundamentals of reading a tape measure and panning a line. You should only upgrade to a stationary table saw when your sheer volume of repetitive cuts makes setting up that jig completely intolerable.